Hmm. All right. So hello again, everyone. For you who doesn't know me yet, my name is Anna from Kider.id. Oops. Yeah. My name is Anna from Kider.id. So this session is the following up session from our event last year at Jakarta. Many of you or almost all of you came down to Jakarta last November. Before we start, I just want to share some short video about the education partners from Singapore that uh, had their great time at our networking gala dinner. Let me show the video.
One, two, three, four.
Okay, that's the video. I will send to you guys as well after this. So, in that event, the representative from SPK Association also came, which is Ibu Shirley Puspitawati, because at that time, Bu Haifa is in Singapore, so to attend other stations. So today we will have her to, like giving her perspective as well in terms of like the opportunity for foreign business to come to Indonesia. So before I give it the station to Bu Haifa, I want to introduce her a little bit. Bu Haifa or Haifa Segewer is working in education industry for almost 20 years. She is now the executive board member of one of Aspeka school in Jakarta. But not only that, she is currently active as board member and advisor of several international school foundation and also leading a network of more than 400 collaborative education unit in Indonesia, or previously we call it international school under International Program Private School Association or Persatuan Sekolah SPK Indonesia as the chairperson, sorry. Apart from her activities in the education field, Haifa is also an experienced professional with demonstrated history of working in various industry, specialized in foreign investment, M&A, company restructuring, foundation law, and education law. So today, Haifa will help us in giving more perspective on how international players can play a role in fulfilling education needs in Indonesia based on her expertise and experience. And today, Haifa is not alone. We will also have her business partner Oliver Anderson that will also give us more perspective and reference on today's topic. So we will have around 40 minutes of presentation, and then we'll be following with Q&A questions. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ibu Haifa Segier. The stage is your book.
Thank you, Anna. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure for me. Hopefully I can meet you face to face anytime soon, because I missed the last session because I was attending EduTech as one of the speakers at that time. Ibu Anna, if you can give me the permission to share screen. Hopefully I can be more engaged with you during the Q&A session. So just to give you an overall overview on some of the probably around regulatory landscape, which probably some of you is not familiar with what actually govern in Indonesia. And I receive a lot of questions in that particular area. So there are some, so I'm trying not to bore you with a lot of stuff. So I'm probably gonna skip some of the, can everyone can see the
Yeah, but
screen?
it's still loading here.
Okay. Okay, let me try again.
Yep, it's there.
Okay. So this is basically the menu that I would like to explain to everyone. Don't worry if Anna hasn't give this to you just yet. I'm happy to share this, so you don't need to probably screenshot or take notes. You will have it with you. So I probably would like to elaborate a little bit more on 3, 4, and 5, which probably have more meat to it, and you probably want to ask questions around this particular area. So just to give you a context on the sessions, the background and what will be covered. Actually, I was directed by Juana to basically cover certain areas. So hopefully today, whatever you wanted to know about entering the Indonesian market and how to penetrate the market, you have more clarity on how to do it. So again, regulatory landscape, probably the basic that you need to understand, and what will be the protection that you will get in terms of the foreign investment in Indonesia, including IP protection, understanding opportunities in the education sector, especially around foreign investment, enrichment program, after school activities, which probably more to your specific areas. Market entry strategies are also going to give a lot of insights about what's happening within the international school in particular on engaging after school activities and enrichment program vendors all this time. I also have the opportunity to ask few international schools to give them insights on what's happening in their school, as well as the school that I actually sit as their board members. And of course, some of the case study, which I'm gonna explain a little bit more probably towards the end of the sessions. So this is one of the key assumptions of the session today. On one will be the market entry for after school or enrichment programs, which the consideration will be around what bucket of regulatory will fit into that particular program, which is going to be a non-formal education services. Defining strategies for market entry, so give you understanding about industry best practice, market insights into non-formal education, who's the key player and how they do it, and deep understanding on regulatory framework for foreign investment in education sector, more to specific requirements on if you want to do business here, what will be the requirements and how to establish, and an indicative cost on how to make it happen. And of course, review of relevant case studies, as well as what will be the protection for your IP. So I'm trying to make it simple because I don't but you probably doesn't want to read the regulation. So I'm trying to summarize a little bit that is quite key. What would be the difference? Of course, everyone knew the difference between formal and non-formal. The good thing is in this bucket, there's more to pros and cons, which is quite beneficial for you. As a non-formal education, you will give a lot of flexibility around the business itself, even though probably there are certain area that probably you cannot have. But for me, it's a less hassle in terms of the process, requirements. It's easier, and of course, it's a lot cheaper to set up a business in non-formal education compared to formal. Although there are certain also limitation around if you are planning to have presence here, you have your own team to be stationed here, and if they are foreigners, there are probably a lot of limitation around expatriates hiring. And then you're probably aware if it's formal, it has to be as a non-profit entity, so it's not really ideal for commercial structure, while for non-formal is all around profits and the structure is allowed commercially. And then I also think that it's good for me to highlight between the foreign company and domestic company, because I know some of the company prefer just to have a collaboration with domestic company because it's not capital heavy. Because as a foreign company, you have to meet certain requirements on capital, which is quite big, which is about 10 billion as the paid up capital for foreign company. And that's going to be for one particular business. So if you planning to have more than one, then it's going to be higher. So for instance, you decide to have not only one business category, then the capital will be multiplied. So domestic obviously is relatively easier, and the capital is not as as big as foreign investment company. But the challenge is that is quite often a concern is use of nominees, because obviously as a local company, you have to put locals as founders as well as sit as commissioners or directors. Unlike Singapore, using of nominees is quite common. It's not really so much common in Indonesia, and legally the protection is quite low in that particular area. So this is just probably a list of requirements to set up the non-formal education company in Indonesia. So just to give you an overview, each of the region might have a different requirements. So for instance, if you want to open your office in Jakarta and Bali, for instance, the requirements in Bali probably slightly different than Jakarta, but typically is similar. The one that probably slightly different will be around the location requirements. Some of the region is quite heavy on local consent compared to Indonesia, that Jakarta, that is more open and less compliant in terms of requirements. Although most of the process will be done online, some of the requirements and the application process will probably require a face-to-face session and explanation to the authorities, as well as the visit to your center or your company registered address. So before 2020, they always call it negative investment list, but now Jokowi have decided to call it positive investment list, because most of the sector is actually pretty much open for foreign investment, and not so much on the negative list, unless it's more to strategic national security and defense. So I choose the category that according to me, might fit to most of you. I know Ibu Analia shared to me the profile of each of your companies and activities. So this is actually the area that you can choose that probably fits to your service offering. Although I'm more than happy to probably explore other area that probably in your interest. But this is the category that is really open for 100% foreign participation. Although the requirements to set up a company is still require a minimum 2 shareholders, but it can be all foreign individual or foreign entity. So in the end, it's a 100% foreign ownership. So this is just trying to explain the structure of a typical limited liability in Indonesia, which is quite similar to private limited in Singapore, and probably in certain area slightly different, but it's pretty much the same. As you know, shareholders is the ultimate decision makers and the overall control of the company. And if you decide, for instance, to use local nominee, you can have protection in terms of reserve matters decision. For instance, you want to put locals as the BOD or BOC, you don't want to give them a lot of authorities, you can put that in the reserve matters, which require your approval. Again, BOD's day-to-day operational and management function is also open for a foreigner to sit, even if it's a local company, as long as the minimum requirements for paid up capital is achieved, which is for local company is going to be 1 billion paid up capital for you to be able to hire expatriates. And then board of commissioner is more on supervisory function, is quite passive in this country, except it's a public listed company. And in terms of IP, I know this is something that Ibu Ana wants me to cover. It's more and more reliable now, protection of IP in Indonesia. The registration process is also pretty straightforward. The government has ratified several conventions regarding the IP protection, and Indonesia is a member of WIPO. So in terms of protection, is really something that is currently seriously being implemented in this regard. Although there are concerns, so this is the typical registration process for IP, whatever IP that you want to register, whether it's copyright or trademark or patent or whatever you wish to register. This is a typical registration process for intellectual property. Everything can be done online. This is a timeline. They're gonna do formality checking, which is basically groundwork of documents, evidence of your ownership on such IP, and see if actually ticks all the bucket. And then publication, basically giving the opportunity for public or anyone to contest or making objection around the application, whether there's already a similar IP being registered or a lot of similarities around IP. So 60 days is actually a publication period for public to basically file for anything with regard your application. And then after that period, the IP office is going to do substantive checking and see if there's any rejection or any similarities or any application as being lodged similarly to your IP. And then once everything is done, the completion of the process, you can just immediately download your certificate. So what will happen if there's any infringement on the IP? So this is probably the area that needs careful consideration, if I may say, because although the protection is there, the process can be really draining in terms of resources as well as costs, obviously. And it will depends on how far you wanna pursue this. Some of the brand that I know is looking to settle this outside the court because obviously it's going to be a lot quicker, it's cheaper. So there are cases when they settled it outside the court by making a publication in newspaper or public records of any infringement, and then usually the one that violates the IP rights will make some kind of public apology and then stop the use of whatever IP that actually in breach. And this is quite common now, unless this is really a big brand that have probably significant budget to basically protect their IP. So probably to answer your question, the regulation is there, the enforcement is there, the protection is there, and the submission of application is a lot easier and faster. So this is just a list of regulation that I use to prepare this presentation. So what will be the opportunities? There's obviously, I know you probably already done your homework in terms of, Indonesia is a land of opportunities. The market is huge. The population is one of the biggest, and the numbers of private school is keep increasing. Although you probably see some drops in the last 2 years because of pandemic, because some schools is struggling to continue their operation, but you're probably going to see a trend to go to where it was before. So just to give you an overview, the opportunity that is available, in terms of Indonesian context, the market landscape, we can't argue that the private markets in Indonesia is increasingly higher and higher. And this is the data that I get from Parthenon, who is focusing on education in Southeast Asia. So all this is data in few years back, but I can see it's still pretty much valid now. So you can see the growth in education sector, the opportunity, that the potential that Indonesia and Southeast Asia in general have towards the global education market. And what will be the key demand drivers in Indonesia? Now the household size is smaller. A lot of family now tend to have less kids, wants to invest more in their kids' education as well as to invest in the future. And then, affordability, everything, in the last few years, the level of affordability combined with the increase of use of technologies is one of the key demand drivers in Indonesia. And also the low capacity versus demand, that, the capacity doesn't match to the demand that is quite high. The value of English proficiency that is becoming more and more, and that's actually one of the key reasons why international education in Indonesia is keep rising, because the desire for international education is still pretty much popular in middle class in this part of the world that is keep increasing in terms of numbers. So consideration in investing in education. This is just an overview. I know it probably not all is relevant to you, just to give you a context on how the investing in education in Indonesia should be considered by a lot of players, international players. And more, I receive inquiries from international education institution, whether it's EdTech or vocational education, language, K-12, which is quite significant now. There's going to be more and more international school group entering Indonesian market. So the barriers is not as much as we probably have over the last decade, and the demand is becoming more and more, and the price rising faster than inflation in most area. So again, great potential, but one of the common barriers for emerging countries is Indonesia is still lagging in that part. And then funding, of course, low profitability of the sector compared to high profit generating tech startup, constraint, difficult access to funding, especially in education, because some of the funders probably doesn't think education as their priority. Although I can see some shifting now, looking at education is part of really a sexy sector and industry for funders to start looking at. Although more and more the funding is allocated to EdTech. So high customer acquisition costs, you're probably aware, being probably new in the market, it's going to be difficult to have that acquisition, and it can be really high to have the acquisition cost for basically acquire customer. Shortage of talent, and that's probably one of the biggest constraints. This is something that also I want to explain towards the end. Low willingness of customers to pay. Indonesian has been really famous on price sensitivity in a way. They are easily, especially for FMCG, the level of loyalty of customer is pretty low. Lack of digital literacy, being a country with a lot of islands, there are gaps between cities that have good access with probably remote cities that probably have limitation in terms of access, of course, because of poor digital infrastructure. And some of the solution that I've been discussing with the governments is how the private sector can supplement this, constraint and making it more opportunity for the industry. So PPP means public-private partnership. So more and more now, the government is trying to boost the public-private partnership to basically trying to overcome this constraint. So what will be the opportunities? Adapting education models in the time of disruption. Everyone thinking that this is unprecedented, all this disruption caused by pandemic. But again, there's a lot of opportunities in even in these big disruptions. Probably the biggest disruption in education history. So I put the link to our blog that you probably can have a look after the session, which we explain a lot about the drivers, the growth of middle class, the positive regulatory landscape, supportive macro, a lot of things that I already explained in the previous slides. So you can, it's kind of a serious reading, so you probably want to take some time to have a look and see, and I think you will find it really useful. So what will be the learning angle of this opportunity? Oh, so, all this center-based disruptions, blended learning and blended service provision, more and more flexibility around service offering that private education market can look at. Tech solution, assessment and service provision are more and more looked by education providers. And after all this pandemic situation, the school is really seriously looking at this. So again, I think this is really the best opportunity to enter Indonesian market. So just to give you an overview on the size of the market. So I captured this from the statistic body of Indonesia. So this is the number of students. I only adapt K-12 market because I think that's more to your market. Let me know if I got it wrong, but I think K-12 is your market. So this is basically the size based on last academic year, the number of students in Indonesia. So it's about 42 million students in K-12. So if I try to dice a little bit, so this is for private. So this was for students. So this is also increased it to only private K-12 market. It's still pretty big. It's about 10,800,000. And just to give you an understanding, of course, most of these numbers will be in the big cities or in the primary city. So I slice again to Jakarta, and only for K-12 market private schools is about 531,000 students in private school in Jakarta region. So I'm happy also to, this data basically is available for public. You can access to the website and see if you want to see per province or per city, you can. So now I would like to go to market entry strategy. So this is probably some of the models that you can look at, and you're probably already familiar with it. Representative office. So obviously you have your own company in Singapore and you just open a representative office, something like a branch, but you don't open another company. So this is basically just to a lot of foreign investment is looking at this to have a deep understanding on the market. And it's no investment needed, except of course your operational license, operational expenses for your office. But some of the business probably not necessarily need this and just want to enter the market. The model that is quite popular is licensing or franchise, which basically you just give the license to whether it's a school or a similar provider like yours who probably wants to expand their offering, because obviously you don't need to have a presence here and you don't need to make any investment. Joint venture, so basically you will have local partner invest with you. Of course, local partners is quite crucial for entering the market, and it's going to be a sharing revenue and liabilities as well. So in terms of risk, it's more manageable than probably full direct foreign investment, which you have full direct control, can consolidate revenue, but again there are big investment that you need to put in place. So I try to break down some of the key requirements, the pros and cons, and what will be the consideration for you to make sure that you actually choose the right model for your particular business. again, if you ask me what will be the best type, I would say it depends on what you want to achieve and how committed you are for entering the market. Some probably doesn't want to put a lot of capital, just want to test the market or just want to see what happened. But of course, if you don't want to put investment, the gain probably is going to be limited naturally. But if you are into long term and want to get even better revenue, of course, full direct and foreign investment is always ideal, because once the market is mature, it makes sense to have long-term investment. So so if you ask me the best practice that so this is one of the insight that I want to share with you. What will be the best practice to enter the market? Obviously, research the market. It's no-brainer. Anyone wants to enter any new market, they have to research the market and try to understand the market. Understanding local regulation is really key, because we don't want to put investment in the end. We cannot really do anything about it. Build relationship, build your network, having connection with associations, probably useful for you. Build network with distributor if you're selling something that probably needs help from distributor. And what also is equally important is make sure you localize your marketing efforts, because what's work in your country is not necessarily works for Indonesia, for instance, because the market will probably slightly different. The expectation is different, the culture is probably a lot different. And again, invest in a local team. Without local presence, whether it's your physical presence of an office or have a staff here who's driving your sales, is really important. So I was asked to explain about online merge offline, which is quite popular now because everyone is facing into new normal. Some of the offering, a lot of people still prefer offline because they see a face-to-face and physical contact is more meaningful than online. And a lot of students with your market is already have this online fatigue, that they really doesn't want to do anything online anymore because they've been doing that for the last 3 years. So we need to probably consider a few things that we can take into account, because there are still constraints in Indonesia a lot around internet and mobile use versus connectivity gaps. Even though Indonesia is one of the highest mobile use, but the connectivity remains the problem in this country, and it's quite unstable, and probably it's going to be a challenge to do a program fully online, unless we probably thinking on certain area in big cities that already well established and well developed in terms of connectivities. And again, this post-pandemic, some require now to be more offline than online. I can see the trends now in the school who just recently reopened without restrictions. So some school already put mask as optional, it's not compulsory anymore. So they're really driving a lot of activities now on site, face-to-face. And then, of course, after school activities, co-curricular activities is always done offline, even though during pandemic, some of the school is still offering online after school activities like, robotics or even science. They can have like, experiment in their home directed by the providers. And now, but everything seems to more on offline than online. And then few enrichment programs that is established is setting up centers in several strategic area to more reach out to more customers. And I'm going to explain in the case study on enrichment program who have centers. So this is just it give you an idea what will be the cost to set up a business in Indonesia. And this is just typical cost that you probably needs to put in your startup costs, the usual, the establishment, if you decide whether you want to just open representative office, you still need to make a deed. Or if it's going to be JV or foreign direct investment, you still need notary to basically have the registration for you. And then for the licenses, whether it's representation office or foreign direct investment, you still need to have all this. And then, of course, the license, the facilities and location requirements, agreement preparation. If you opt for license or franchising, obviously you're gonna need agreements in place, IP protection, registration. I put all in this slide. So some insight that I would like to share. So this is a typical after-school activities that available in most of international schools. So there are schools that have this as their built-in program. So basically it's part of the fees that they charge to students, and usually it's compulsory for students to take. They can have several options. For instance, the school offer 10 after-school activities, and the students can choose up to 2 compulsory programs. So it's basically part of the fee, so they don't charge it separately. And it can be done by 2 types, whether it's operated by school internally or they engage third party like yourself to provide the program. And the other one will be optionals, which means the students need to pay more on top of their fees. So if they choose one, they pay, in accordance with the service that they choose. The fees mostly different because providers usually charge different, and the program will probably different in terms of frequency and timing. And some put this as optional. Some, for instance, now because the school is just back to normal, some schools still have this as optional. So not all students have to take after-school program. Again, it can be operated by school internally or by third party. So I just want to give you 3 case study that we can discuss. And again, all this information is based on insight and public records. I didn't have any deep down research on these particular providers. So you want to have more details on each of the providers, you can have that during your market research. So Kumon is quite popular. It's probably one of the programs that is coming from outside the country, because traditionally all this enrichment program, tutorial centers is done locally. So Kumon is quite, at the time, it's quite popular because it's new. Some people think that is quite effective in terms of methods. The several offering is actually evolved from just mathematics in the beginning, and they also now serve language as well. It's open for K-12 students, and the growth model is franchise and centers opening. So it's basically on site, and they give they give basically worksheets to their students to do it every day, but they can come to the center twice a week, which is part of the fees. So you can see this is the fees that they charge, that you probably can see as your reference. So they charge the fee differently by age and by level, and also different in each region. Again, you probably want to be flexible around pricing, because obviously a big city like Jakarta can afford more than you probably go to, let's say, North Sumatra, which is also a big market, but you cannot charge the same. So this is just one of the example that you can consider around pricing and offering and how they choose their growth model. The second one is iEngineer. I believe it's from Singapore. At least that's what they mention in their website. So the service offering is STEM program, which is increasingly more popular now in schools. Their growth models is also similar to Fumon, and they're doing that face-to-face in school. So they actually offer this as part of the program in the school. So they come to the school instead of inviting the students to come to the centers. But the offering is quite wide in terms of program. So they have after school classes, they have extracurricular, they have holiday camps, field trips. They even, open for parties and social events. So this is the fees that they charge. And the commercial arrangement with school who choose them as providers is basically a commission base, and it's quite ranging from 10 to 20%. So I don't probably don't want to use that as reference, because for me, as a new player in the market, you probably want to be more flexible in terms of commission, because what you need to do probably to have more and more schools using your program and have that awareness there first before you start really charging probably higher fees. So this is probably one of the case study I want to explain, because it's completely platform based and it's quite popular. Ruang Guru is one of the biggest edtech in Indonesia, and they expand their offering for kids as language, life skill, academic tutor, and homeschooling. And of course, being fully online, they can charge a lot less than probably those who provide in the center or face-to-face. And they also charge differently, depends on the type of the program. And this is also something that you probably want to look at. This Ruang Guru they don't provide this exclusively, and it's not their program. They also working with partners to basically provide the platform. So this is a lot of people ask me, try to see several offering, and it can be really wide in terms of range in different school, because obviously they will look at the ability for their students and parents to pay. So even for SPK school, who international school, there's a lot of big gaps in terms of fees, the school fees. A big international school probably can charge $25,000 per year, but there are international school who probably only charge not even 5,000 a year. So obviously their market ability to pay or willingness to pay is a lot different than those who's paying 25,000. But I try to just get one reference. This is basically coming from one of the payment platform, because a lot of providers is using platform as their payment gate. So you can see probably the biggest chunk of transaction is between, you know, the 37.7% is paying less than, and this is monthly. This is monthly charges. So you can see it's almost like 70% of the customer that using the platform is paying between, you know, less than 100K to 300K. That's per month. So that give you an idea on what will be affordability of people who are willing to pay. And I actually have few data that shown the students who probably younger, the parents tend to spend less than their kids who probably already on their secondary years to high school. So probably the offering for preschool and primary cannot be the same as the offering for secondary and high school. And naturally, the complexity of the services will be different. So probably that's one of the considerations why they cannot charge high fees for a younger learner. So what will be the conclusion of, you know, I'm trying to wrap this quickly because I know you probably already have a burning question that you want to ask me, and I would like to address one by one, if I may, so you get more clarity on your particular context, because I'm trying to be as broad as possible, but I already told Ibu and Elias, if any of you wants to have a one-on-one session with me after this, we can arrange a schedule so we can discuss more details on your particular context that you probably not comfortable in sharing in this session. I'm happy to do it for you. So this is the key takeaways. What is the essential that you need to look at? Local presence is a key. Indonesians tend to want to know where your office is, and sometimes, you know, the location of office can dictate how prestigious your institution is. And, you know, support service in this country is also crucial in terms of, you know, customer service, customer support is really something that is also essential for most of the customers. Local partnership, local partner, again, is really crucial if you want to enter a new market. Having a support from your local partner who ideally have a knowledge and experience in this industry will probably one of the key things. Contextualized product for local market. Obviously, even international school players, if they want to open school in Indonesia, they have to adjust their program to adjust the requirements from the local government, have the national curriculum blend in their curriculum. So obviously that's also something that you need to look at. Again, flexible in pricing. Like I said, Indonesia is really price sensitive. They will compare pricing between you and your competitor. So it will be good to have that flexibility around pricing and see if you can extend as low as possible in the beginning until you get that traction and you have that awareness. Actually, I want to add also the local partnership and partner can also means that you have a collaboration with association as well. Like for instance, like Ibu Analia was mentioned, I was actually part of the largest network of international school in Indonesia. Rather than you probably have to approach school one by one or approach one local partner at a time, it will make sense to just reach out, probably group of schools or school with wider network, or probably an association. There are similar association like PSSI. There's also a private school association which more on the national schools. My association probably more on international school, which probably attract more to you because the ability to pay is probably higher than a local school. So that would be the overall presentation that I prepared. It's just a limitation. This is my contact number and details. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. That's my WhatsApp number and that's my email. If you want to have a look at our websites, there are blogs that are probably useful for you on giving more insights on education market in this country. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Bu Haifa. The next 30 minutes we will use for Q&A. I think I will just try to check if some of you already have the question, you can unmute yourself. But because we have limited time, so yeah, we need to be good. Is there any questions? I believe like Li Peng has one in the chat. Do you want to ask yourself?
I think this is it the pricing?
Yes, I'm referring to that one, that slide.
Yeah, so it's a monthly pricing. So the
Okay.
one that I extract the data is basically monthly.
Okay, thank you.
And Jonathan is giving me a direct message that he can't, unfortunately, he can't see my slides. So hopefully you can still hear me earlier and take note some of the thing that you probably find useful. The slides, I'm sure Ibu and Leah is going to share to you. But feel free to ask question if you think that, you know, you probably, my connection is a bit, it's heavy rain here. So it's the connectivity is probably troubled. So maybe you can't see my slide, but I hope everyone can.
Yeah, no worries. I just didn't want to disturb your presentation. We'll get the slides from them later. Thanks.
Dedi raised hand. You can unmute.
Yeah, Bu Haifa, I'm Dedi from Kotkun Academy. Thanks so much for the presentation. I just wanted to understand because in the international school market in Indonesia, they would probably have vendors that they are working with, right? Currently, and I'm sure that in different areas of enrichments. How difficult is it to penetrate, and build that new vendor to school relationship? Because that would mean, that particular coding providers, for example, have to be replaced. How often do you see this happening?
Okay, I would like to welcome my MD as well. Oliver is here joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Oliver.
So
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was a bit late.
I'm gonna try to answer your question, Dedi, but I will also gonna ask Oliver to add. So I know some, especially big international school, they have a list of requirements for vendors to be able to provide service to their school, and usually it's a long-term player. But I would say they're not close to a new player. What you need to do is trying to identify what makes you different with other providers. So if you don't have that unique value proposition that you can show to the school, it's unlikely for them to take a new one, because they're probably gonna think, why I should engage new providers if their offering is the same.
Yeah.
Well, I'm already comfortable with the current one. That's why there's a lot of, you probably already done your homework. There's a lot of providers of enrichment program and after school activities. And a lot of them have similar offerings. You know, this robotics and STEM is quite popular. And English is like a long-standing service. So if it's
I think the connection is not good.
and then it's will can sell. We have in countries done rather than share, but my presence is only in Singapore. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello.
maybe you can like
Yeah, repeat your last part, because I think it was the connection.
Yeah, so I think the presence, for instance, if you say that you're coming from Singapore, but you have a network in Southeast Asia, will be different. So again, there's a few things that you have to stand out, if I may say that correctly. So because my connection is pretty bad, I'm gonna ask Oliver to add a few bits on that. Oliver.
Thanks, Bu Haifa. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I'm going to keep my video off because I don't want you to lose anything and have to repeat everything. So, Dedi, your question was about the turnover of service providers in international schools,
Yeah.
and particularly around the coding service provision. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, service providers in international schools, yeah, are usually engaged on a long-term basis, but there is an element of revolving doors about it. In the coding space, you're probably aware of your competitors there. People like CodingV who've created their own ecosystem at kind of mid to upper mid price points in Indonesia with things like competitions and intra-school events and things like that. So the learning there, I'm sure Haifa covered it in her deck and just now, is pricing, price sensitivity, and also proof points of what you can do. The benefit being a provider from Singapore is the assumption, and obviously I hope rightly, is that what you do comes with cachet and its own proof point and is therefore more justifiable. But if I can take a step further back and look at successful market entry, the first thing you have to do, and going back to Haifa's earlier slide about the 4 takeaways, the first thing is obviously raising awareness, and there's multiple ways to do that with Indonesia, and that relates to our second point, which is partners and partnerships. And the difference there, I mean, you know, partners, not everyone wants a local partner, like a super license holder to drive your business for you. But what you will need is partnerships, and that not only drives awareness, but will drive sales. Some of the most successful overseas companies to enter the market here in extracurricular service provision in K-12 and higher ed have done so, raised awareness at multiple levels. They've had their own sales team to hit schools and universities individually, but the first stage has always been to partner with larger umbrella organizations in a strategic sense to raise awareness among the educational institutions that they want to work in. One of the most successful market entries that we worked on was a UK edtech provider in the TVET, training and vocational education area. And they added on to the private sector was public sector awareness. So they drove their awareness and their value add and proof points within the Indonesian market by giving free projects away to regional and national government within Indonesia. Now, that in itself was extremely difficult, as you can imagine. You might not have the means to do that, but the idea there was driving awareness, enhancing your cachet in the key market, working with the private sector umbrella organizations to give you the entry into those individual education institutions. They're really putting a bit more color into what I was speaking about earlier. Does that help, Debbie?
Yep. Thanks so much, Oliver.
All right. Is there any questions? The second question? Okay, Janice, you can unmute yourself. Yep.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Hello.
Janice.
Dennis from our music studio. Thank you, Haifa, for the very, very invaluable presentation. Really is an eye-opener. Understandably, parents in the international school focus very highly on, the important so-called subjects like, maths, English, and science, and of course, coding even, and things related to technology. I was just wondering whether parents will pay a premium on music. What's the music scene like in an international school?
I think we have
Janet?
international.
Yeah, I think I was having a drink of water. It looks like a screen's frozen. So I'll answer that, Janice. It depends on the context, and by the context I mean the price point in the international schools. The more better provision international schools, premium and upwards, so premium, super premium, but by that, if I put a US dollar value on it, it's about $25,000 per year upwards. That's the price point. Would generally not rely particularly heavily on third-party service provision with regards to things like music, because that's their value add at that price point. So visual arts, performing arts, and sports, and some technology subjects are what they really drives their value at that super premium price point. So you can expect them to have their own teachers and their fully resourced areas, not just rooms, but complete departments full with that. That's the normal landscape. Once you get down to sub-premium and upper mid, so that's anything from about 20,000 US down to about 12,000 US per year, you can expect that resourcing of those subjects to be a lot thinner. And that's where companies like yours would come in. But I'm not sure exactly what you do, Janice, but a lot of these things are expected to be delivered on site. So third party providers either do it on site at the school, or on and off through a hybrid kind of platform, or they have a long-term agreement referring students to your center, which is probably center-based.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
All
If
right.
it's music, what about money matters?
Financial literacy.
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurship, I think we all agree entrepreneurship is becoming more and more popular as one of the curriculum that the school is teaching now, if not part of the program. So if I'm not mistaken, Money Matters can play a role in that. Again, like Oliver mentioned, if it's a big school, can provide everything. They even have department, and not so much on small schools. And that's why I explained to you there's a huge gap in type of SPK school, international school, from very small, who probably have a limitation in terms of offering, that can benefit from your services. So And Janice, you'll be surprised. I think music is becoming more popular now, especially now. A lot of parents, I know it depends on the type of parents in different schools, but there's a lot of young parents, progressive parents who have really educated abroad, who really want to have that kind of holistic approach, not only academically but a lot of skills like art also is becoming more popular, music, life skills, even cooking is one of the, because of the MasterChef, becoming, no, I'm serious. A lot of people actually thinking on investing in having a proper kitchen studio for their kids as one of the offering. So to actually prepare the students and basically embrace their passion, what they're good at, and some probably really exceptional in music. And because it's a small school, probably the school cannot fulfill that potential, and that's where your offering will play a significant part of that.
Can I add? And it relates to Janice's point and Jopez's, sorry, the gentleman's last point there. A lot of K-12, especially schools, is horses for courses, meaning people choose schools for different reasons. So and around there are so many choices, not only in terms of price and facilities, but profile of teachers and location and everything else, but equally important is the profile of what the school offers in terms of service provision. So in terms of market entry, I think the learning there and our experience is, if you don't have something of universal appeal to all schools, and maybe not all schools quite honestly want to push entrepreneurship, or perhaps not in the way that you do it, and I'm being very perhaps a bit too frank about that. So to enter the market here, you'd need to navigate or map the market quite carefully so you wouldn't waste your time and your resources about exactly which price points and which schools and which geographies to really look at and to really focus on and target, because they're all extreme, particularly in Jakarta and increasingly in Bali and in other tier B cities. Different types of schools are becoming demarcated, not only with regards to the price point, but with also the service provision. I don't know if I made you aware of that earlier on. So.
Okay, actually, I have one question representing someone that cannot join today. So Muhammad already told us about the typical of after-school activities, which is it can be built-in programs or also optional programs. Do you have like any reference for all of us here regarding the price point of that? For example, if it become a built-in programs, like how much school willing to pay for the vendor, or if it's optional programs, how much we can charge the student per term or per semester?
You want me to answer?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so that's extremely difficult. So the way that K-12 private schools in Indonesia operate is, so if I look at it purely commercially, which is the question, so schools in Indonesia operate with an EBITDA of up to about 45% and sometimes down to about 30%. And if that means anything to you, it's not, when it's down to 30%, it's not particularly doing super well. And so how do they manage to operate that at the price point that they operate is obviously to have very tightly controlled budgets. And obviously how that's done at the lower price points is really controlling HR costs. So if you're having a program that fills a void in their curriculum, what I'm trying to say is don't expect to be remunerated particularly well for plugging a gap in their curriculum, because they'll probably be absorbing that cost themselves in their fee. If it's an after-school program, obviously it relates to the price point of the school. Schools typically charge a couple of million rupiah a week if they're per child. If the child is doing 2 or 3 after-school activities, so you can, and that's in Singapore dollars, about $200, right, per week, and that's at the premium and above price point, and obviously that comes down significantly. So again, Analia, sorry, I can't really give you a definitive answer on there, and it's extremely difficult to benchmark. But the takeaways are, I mean, if they're absorbing the cost and not passing it on to the parents, it's going to be tight, the budget-wise. If they are passing the cost directly to the parent after school program, you've probably got more flexibility there.
Perhaps I can add a little bit more. I think it depends on how big you want to scale your business, right? I mean, you probably can charge more, but probably your client base is not going to be much, right? If you can drop your fees, then the affordability is going to be higher. You can reach more your client, basically. For instance, like, you know, again, there's a huge gap in terms of pricing, even within the SPK school for their fees. Obviously, the affordability is different. And then you move on to the private school. Some of the private school even charge higher fees than international school, which probably can afford more. So I always say this to a new player: if you can invest in awareness in the beginning and really drop the fees. Some providers is even provide free trial for several times. Like, for instance, okay, this one term is going to be free, but you have to pay for the next term, for instance. The good thing about international school is it's not pay per session, right? Because they can commit, a minimum is 1 term. Some school will probably charge even yearly. So if you can have that investment level in the very beginning, just to penetrate the market, let them know about your offering, what makes you different, and why they have to choose you, without so much looking at, you know, because I have to price this number, then probably giving you a better chance to penetrate the market and have a bigger coverage of market.
Okay, if I may add one other question. Like, I know like the range is very big, depends on the school fee, depends on the city. If we can have the percentage wise, for example, like after school activity is 10% or 20% of the school fee or less.
You want to answer that?
I think I'd have to, I don't want to give you an answer off the top of my head, because I think, but I'm willing to say it's incremental, meaning it's not very big. But I don't mind going away and looking at a few of our clients, asking them what that would be, so, which would give you an idea by price point, if that would make sense. Yeah. Okay. We'll share that with you once we have it, probably next week sometime.
Thank you so much. It will be
No
helpful
worries.
for all the friends here.
Well,
is there a
after
question?
today's sessions, looks to me that it's not very encouraging for me to proceed further.
Really?
Am I right to say
And
that?
I'm
I
not
mean,
making a good presentation then.
no, your presentation was so good that, you know, the Indonesian market doesn't seem to be ready for us. Number one, the price, the spending power, all right? And I don't think that the market is ready. Oh, I know. I think I mean, getting to just get for myself, you know, I look at it, hey, getting into Indonesia itself really, the shipping cost is expensive. The spending power might not be there. I got to lower the price. I got to do a lot of awareness, which, okay, we can do awareness. It's part of marketing campaign. But again, I don't like what and it's asking is what's percentage of the people or the market are people going to sign up for all those enrichment class or no things like that, and looks at it, no, I don't think so. I might be wrong. Okay. For your comments then, Lydia.
So can I then ask, I mean, everyone can tell me, because to be honest, I don't have any idea on price point that you're gonna charge. Obviously, you cannot charge Singapore rate to Indonesia, right? So probably if you can give me and Oliver an idea of what would be the price point you're looking at.
Well, I'm quite flexible with my things, okay, but to a point, okay, if we lower than like for example, my board game, my Money Junior board game, if we had the lowest until so low, I think and videos you can answer it for that. You got the lower until so much that I can't even cover my costs at all. Then to me, what's the point? Then if I want to run a lesson, okay, just a typical lesson, okay, on let's say on the online, okay, I typically charge $25 per hour per child, Sing dollars. So how much can I lower for Indonesia? And of course, this is like what some of the people here ask, it's not your bread and butter thing, not academic subject. I'm teaching about money subject that everybody wants to avoid. All right, school don't want to teach, nobody want to touch about it. It's a taboo subject, this and that. So it's even to drive that is even harder.
Perhaps maybe the model is really that we shouldn't be using Singapore resources and Singapore manpower to actually cater to the Indonesian market. So I think I figured out that that's what also I guess the key points also that we should really be tapping on the local partnerships to actually deliver some of the content that we want to actually bring in as well to the Indonesian market. So yeah, would that be a right way to look at it?
Yeah, Lydia, I think I'll try and answer both those last points.
Yeah.
First of all, then with regards, I'll get to the formal one with regards to the market. So the K-12 market in Indonesia is conservatively valued per annum at $1 billion and growing. The burgeoning price point there is mid to lower mid across regardless of geography. The attraction to market entry is scale, and of course it's not easy. With regards to activity in the K-12 sector, since I'm trying to get my quarters right now, so please bear with me. Since Q3 last year, there's been massive interest from regional strategic basic school operators looking to come into Indonesia. So you've probably seen some transactions already closed and others about to happen over the next few quarters here now. So in the broader context, Indonesia, one of Hyphen's earliest slides, is way behind its name as the end with regards to private education, formal and non-formal. Now, all those things to me represent opportunity, but the learning is that unpack your assumptions and your cost structures of where you are currently operating, as Lydia said. The attraction to coming to this market is scale, and it's not easy to get it. What you will need, as Hyphen said, is a local partner. Really, if you can't commit to having a team or representative office here, you really need a strong partner who's familiar with your sector, your space, the delivery of it, and can build in that price sensitivity that Hyphen spoke about earlier. That's the key to success. So I hope that kind of answers both your points. But Lydia, I think you're bang on with your comments there.
All right, we have Felix here. Want to ask questions? You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for the sharing. It's very interesting to hear your thoughts on this. So you mentioned that the K-12 market is valued conservatively at a 1 billion valuation. Can I ask, is this primarily situated within the Javanese islands, or is it spread across all 3 islands as well?
That's not a valuation. That's the gross revenue a year in that sector. Most of it is in Java, predominantly in Jakarta, and if you're looking at Surabaya, and then there's a very large drop off when you go to Bali, and then the next largest sectors are evenly distributed in Sumatra and Sulawesi. So you're basically looking at Java and Bali.
All right, that's fair. Thank you so much.
Okay. Swati, do you have something to say?
You think I want to say something?
No.
Add to the conversation that, I've been speaking to an international school in Jakarta, and all the conversations have been very promising. However, it stuck at a point where they've asked me to circle back after we have our presence in other international schools. So, it's a chicken and egg situation where they want to see you in other international schools before they sign you up. So, that's more like a comment. I don't think there's a question there, but yeah, I mean, I heard the point where Oliver mentioned that it's about, reaching out to umbrella brands where they can put you in multiple schools at a point. So yeah, so that's interesting. And all the other thing, of course, they want to see the trainer credential, which is a fair point. We've been sending them profiles of our trainers who've been in Singapore, training international students in Singapore, but they want to see somebody who's based in Indonesia, which is again a fair ask. So yeah, I think there are a couple of, the conversations have been promising, but yeah, we have to at our end be able to be ready with the, I think the supply side of it.
Do you have any comment on that? Like chicken and egg problem?
Yeah, well,
big problem.
Some of our projects is actually probably different context, but it's quite similar. Education industry, most of the school is actually family owned, right? And they are pretty traditional in approach. So that's the presence, the local connection is really crucial. And you're probably aware the market for most international schools here is still Asian. It's really culturally, you probably can tell, right? It's really like really close connections. Everyone knew each other and things like that. So obviously they want to cross-reference. That's why the first, one of the key takeaways is that local partnership and partner is highlighted. I'm not saying without local partners, you can't grow, but it probably can give you a sense of, they know the market, they've been here, they have the connection. You don't have to really build your own network. You can just tap that network. In a way, it's faster. And in terms of liability, you can basically distribute that with your partner. So it just makes sense, right? In terms of, unless you probably already have like worldwide presence, everyone knew you, when you say your brand, they know already, probably different, and you can do it your own because everyone know you. But if it's really a regional brand, or you probably only have presence in Singapore, then it's probably makes sense, right, to connect with other partners.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Which is my next call was to Lydia. How do we do this?
Yeah. Maybe after this, you can say to that school that Haifa.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something that
Is it okay if I know the school? I probably. So
sure, it's Jakarta. It's Jakarta Intercultural School.
Oh, okay. So you aim for the largest.
Yeah, interestingly, parent actually recommended to them, and was why it became, slightly, it kind of expedited. But yeah, I mean, they took a couple of names, in fact, in the email saying, these are the schools that we look up to when we, so they've given me the list of the schools that they also look for, in case the service provider also provides the services there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe the last question, if there's any. Is there any other questions before we close the session? All good? All right. So thank you again, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Bu Haifa and also Oliver, to deliver the very good presentation and Q&A sessions. After this, we will distribute the material to all of you. And of course, Kido and Flying Cape will also follow up with all you guys to help you entering Indonesian market. And what else? Yeah, maybe in Indonesia we have a culture of photo session before we close the session.
And I just to remind you again, I mean, you will have my contact details in the presentation. Feel free to reach out anytime. Even asking questions you probably forgot to ask in this session, I'm happy to answer for you.
All right, thank you so much. Oh, by the way, sorry, before we take a photo and close the session, let me one more time share my screen, because there's some company here that not joining our annual event Kido Fest. So I would like to play a quick video for our last Kido Fest.
Suasana bareng, joget-joget bareng, bikin TikTok bareng. Pokoknya hari ini is such a fun day. Thank you ya semuanya. Dadah, tetap sukses selalu Kido Fest.
Kita dari Batikyu. Jadi Batikyu itu apa? Batikyu itu adalah singkatan yang bakat unik. Kalau untuk event ini cukup meriah ya, ketemu sama teman-teman tenan yang lain, terutama teman-teman dari Singapura. Jadi ada networking juga buat Kido Fest kedepannya, mungkin bisa lebih rame lagi, tenan-tenan juga lebih banyak lagi, terus rangkaian acaranya lebih rame lagi sih gitu.
So welcome everyone. It's Felix from the Global Citizen Education Group. I'm very happy to introduce a global citizen to everyone. Now, for Kido Fest, we're very excited to finally be in Indonesia. We will try to do our best for the Indonesian market and provide the best services possible. Overall, we're very happy to be here.
Halo, saya Airo dari Walnut Coding Indonesia. Saya sangat berterima kasih kepada Kido Festival karena acaranya sangat sukses tahun ini. Jadi sukses terus untuk event Kido Fest. Harapan saya tahun depan tentunya dengan tema yang jauh lebih keren, bintang tamu yang jauh lebih keren, dan kita pastinya akan ikut lagi.
Kesan aku tuh happy banget bisa tampil di Kido Fest. Terima kasih Kido Fest sudah mengundang aku di acara yang luar biasa seperti ini. Tadi performance teman-teman juga bagus loh. Aku suka deh.
Okay, that's the video. I will
Before
also.
we were using
I'm sorry.
Monday.com, our team was drowning.
Yeah, I will also send the link of the video to you guys. And now the photo session. Please open your camera if possible, and then I will screenshot. Hold on. Okay, in 1, 2, 3, cheers. One more time. I think Lipeng somehow the the video is not on. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, Lydia, do you have a thing to say before we close? Still mute.
Yes. Thank you everyone for the session. Thank you, Oliver and Haifa. I think the partners here actually I think when we actually talk to them, we are all actually very keen to see how we can contribute to the education scene in Indonesia. I think it's a matter of finding the right partners. I think Anna actually is able to actually help that facilitate that process as well. So I think we look forward to more collaborations in the upcoming months. So thank you very much. So we'll love to tap on your expertise as well when we are in Indonesia. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Happy weekend, everybody.
Oh yeah, happy weekend. I forgot to say.
Happy Chinese New Year, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.